Next we pick up pocket fives in the hijack. Under the gun +1 limps in, I raised to 25. The cutoff calls, the big blind calls, under the gun +1 6 around 2. 4 of us want to see what the dealer has in store. He puts out a flop of 8-8 deuce with 2 hearts. Checks to me. I'm conflicted about what I want to do here. Checking is probably the best option, but my opponents didn't start out with a pocket pair better than mine. I'm ahead unless someone's holding an 8, and this will probably be my only shot to take a stab at it to deny equity and win the pot. I'm also the pre-flop aggressor, so betting continues a story that I have a hand like an overpair or 2 overs with a flush draw. The reasons against betting are that I have multiple opponents. It could be tough to get anyone to call with a worse hand or fold a better one. I go with option number 1 and I bet 70, but I don't necessarily like this play. The cutoff calls, the 2 other players fold, the turn is an ace, and this is a much better card from my range than it is from my opponents. I mostly put him on a hand like a middling pocket pair. Those hands will have a difficult time calling a second bullet with an overcard out there. I figure my pocket fives are no good, and I bet 165 purely as a bluff because this card should help me more than the cutoff. I can rep aces, an 8, deuces, an ace-high flush draw, or maybe I happen to c-bet as a bluff with some other ace-high holding that now has a pair. I usually wouldn't c-bet with ace-high, but my opponent doesn't necessarily know that. He folds right away. I take a line that I don't normally take. It might not be optimal in the long run, but it works out here. Took 2 bullets, but we got the win. Not long after, we pick up pocket 6s in the small blind. Under the gun +1 calls for 5, so does under the gun +2. I don't have a hand that I want to reopen the pot with, so I check. The big blind also checks. 4 of us see the flop. The dealer puts out king queen 6 with 2 diamonds. Turns out it's actually not that hard to flop a set. It happens all the time. I'm first to act, and a lot of people tend to check here and either check raise or check call. I don't want to risk it checking through. I also tend to lead and limp to pots from the blinds with draws, so I need to do it with my strong hands too. Note that this is the best hand that I'll ever have in this situation, since I would certainly raise pre-flop with pocket queens or kings. I make it 15, I get 1 customer out of the big blind right away. He's the person who I flopped a set of 9s against earlier, and then bluffed when I had pocket 5s. He didn't see my cards in those hands, he just knows that I've been betting a lot in pots, so he's probably not expecting me to be very strong. Under the gun +1 also calls. Under the gun +2 folds. There are 3 of us involved. The turn is a 3, and this is a great card. There are multiple draws that were possible on the flop, and none of them get there. I'm going to continue to charge my opponents if they want to stick around. I bet 50. The big blind has had enough of me betting and taking down pots. He throws in a raise to 150. Under the gun +1 folds. I couldn't be happier to be facing a raise in this situation. There's no way the big blind checked pre-flop with kings or queens, so I essentially have the nuts. I re-raise to 400. Before my chips are even all out there, I get snap called. This is an interesting situation. We're in nearly a $900 pot that started out with everyone limping. And we're going to the river out of position with a set, but there are tons of draws. I'm hoping for a complete blank, but there aren't many of those in the deck. Any club or diamond could potentially complete a flush, and every card in the deck that doesn't pair the board, other than an 8, will make a straight possible. The river is the deuce of hearts, which is about as blank as it gets. I've got 740 left in my stack, and my opponent has me covered. I only have one option.
All in. What is it?
No.
All in.
How much? It's about 750,
740. They're not the call.
The big blind has queen 3. He called the flop bet with middle pair, and then turn 2 pair. We win a huge pot right away and get the full double up. Nice off to an amazing start. Already we're winning 1345. The last time I was here, I was also up 1,000 early, but then promptly got stuck 1,000 right after, so I don't want to do that tonight. There's lots of variance in these Texas games, and things can change quickly. Things at the table are going well. I pick up ace-king suited in the hijack. The player on my right limps in. I raise to 30. The button calls, the big blind calls, the limper calls too. 3 people love pain. 4 of us see the flop. It's ace-8 deuce rainbow. We've got top on a dry board. The big blind checks. Middle position player bets 75. I just flat. The button and the big blind fold. We're heads up. The turn is the 6 of clubs. The opponent leads for 100. This seems weak. He didn't bet that much more than he bet on the flop. I believe I have the best hand, and I want to make it more. The issue is that there aren't a lot of worse one-pair hands that would limp in pre-flop and be willing to call a raise, so I have to make it on the small side. I raise to 250. The player thinks it over and tries to stare me down.
I guess you do this for a living, so I'm not going to get a read on you.
Actually, I'm a professional cat whisperer. I play poker on the side, but feel free to stare away. Eventually, he makes the call. The river is the 9 of hearts. Shouldn't have changed anything. The opponent checks. Still get the feeling that he's weak and won't want to call a very large bet if he has something that I'm beating, so I actually down bet from the turn. I make it only 200. I'm not sure what worse ace he'd be limping in with. that would want to call for anything more than that, especially after I raised him on the previous street. I hear some words that make me feel pretty good.
I got a kicker problem.
I like it.
I gotta call you.
We get the call and turn over the winner. The player shows that he had ace-3 offsuit and couldn't let it go. We're up over 1900 on the session. I get moved to my 4th table in a private room against several other deep stack pros. There's no better way to rein it in other than to open from middle position with 7-5 suited. That's what I do. The cutoff calls, the big blind 3-bets to 70. If I was playing 1K effective or less, and he was my only opponent, I might consider folding, but everyone in the hand has 2,500 or more, and this is a very small raise. It's only 50 to go, so I'm already getting well over 2-1 on a call. I'm in position on the 3-better. Plus, if I call, the cutoff will be getting priced in to call too, so I'm essentially getting more than 3-1 with a disguised hand if it hits. Plenty of implied odds. I toss in 50 more, the cutoff calls, 3 of us go to the flop, it's 6-6-4 rainbow, we've got the open-ended straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. The big blind leads for 150, there's no hand I'd ever raise with on this flop, so I flat the bet. The cutoff folds, it's heads up, the turn is another 4, the big blind checks. You don't want to have to rely on making hands every time you get involved with suited 1-gappers, so I take this opportunity to bluff with some equity. I make it 250. If I have 7-5 here, I could potentially have a 6 or a 4 in my hand, plus I can rep hands like pocket queens, jacks, and 10s. They're trying to deny equity from ace-high type holdings, which is what it seems like I'm up against after the player checks turn. That's another reason why I bet relatively small, because I shouldn't have to bet too big to get folds out of hands like ace-high, and if he has jacks or better, he won't be folding to a larger bet anyway. The opponent says, "Nah, playa, I'm not letting it go that easy." He makes the call, the river is a 5, my hand goes from having no showdown value to now beating all ace-highs. The player checks. I was originally considering bombing it as a bluff, but there's no need to anymore. I snap check back. The big blind has ace-queen offsuit. We win a rather big pot by hitting it on the river. Note that I kind of forced it in this situation. Normally I shouldn't be opening with 7-5 suited in a tough lineup from middle position, but I was getting antsy and I happened to get lucky in this instance. If it had gone the other way, I may have been pissed with myself for losing hundreds of extra dollars unnecessarily. I might have tilted off a lot more money after. A few hands later, I'm dealt pocket jacks under the gun. I opened to 20. Under the gun plus 1 calls, the cutoff calls for revenge, small blind gets in the mix, and the big blind calls. Everyone wants to feel the wrath of Brad the Cat Whisperer, and they do because the flop comes ace, king, jack, rainbow. We've got bottom set. It checks to me. I don't have to worry about anyone having a better set because no one 3-bet me pre-flop. I only have to be concerned about queen 10. I'll still have outs against that holding. I bet 70. Under the gun plus 1 calls, the cutoff folds. Small blind then raises to 275. The big blind folds. The action's on me. Small blind doesn't have much left in the stack, so I re-raise to 570, risking my recently acquired purple chip. Prefer not to lose that one. Under the gun plus 1 folds. Small blind doesn't snap call, so I'm excited for that. There's no way he's contemplating what to do for such a small raise with anything that beats me, so I'm hoping for a call. He lets it go, I show him I had it, and get all my chips back, plus some additional ones from people that hate money. In the last interesting hand of the night, I've got ace-king suited in the cutoff. It's a straddle pot. Under the gun plus 1 limps in. Joey calls middle position. I raise to 50. Under the gun plus 1 calls. Joey calls, and it finally goes to the button straddle. He calls. 4 of us see the flop. It's king 7-6 rainbow. Under the gun plus 1 leads for 95. Joey folds. It's on me. I can't imagine the under the gun plus 1 player has absolutely nothing here. He called 50 pre-flop and bet into 3 others. I just flat, which I'm happy to do. The button folds. It's heads up. The turn is a 4. Not going to change much. If I was ahead on the flop, I'm probably still ahead, even though some unlikely straights get there. The opponent bets again, this time for 165. I call, but the camera doesn't capture it. The river is a 10. It's not a great card because a hand like king 10 is something that my opponent could have limp called 50 with. Here he fires for a 3rd street, but only for 185. I snap. He asks if I have a king. I nod yes. He says that he has queens and keeps his cards face down. I turn over ace king and win a big final pot.